no matter what I say or illustrate, there is no interest. I know those who have tried similar things in Transylvania experienced similar reactions. Those leading the Hungarian club are of the opinion that this is the 21st century, and there is no point to waste time on this, but in my opinion this is a very flawed viewpoint because I believe it is not only up to Hungary to ensure that the KUVASZ is preserved as a breed. Globally there are approximately 500 KUVASZ puppies born annually, and if out of that we Canadians are able to contribute 100 or 150 or even possibly 200 puppies a year, which I believe we will because I am spearheading this very aggressively and the breeders are listening to me, and finally the bottom line is that we are able to sell the puppies. So if we look at the current situation with every breeder in Canada, including myself, I have an entire waiting list for puppies from farmers who have already committed and sent a deposit, and as it stands now many will have to wait approximately a year before they can obtain a puppy from me, and like I just mentioned earlier this is the case with all the Canadian breeders currently. So our issue is not that we are unable to sell our puppies, but that we do not have the capacity to keep up with demand. We do not have enough pups, and I don't know what to give the farmers.
So less are born than there is demand for? So let me ask you this then, since you mentioned it earlier that the KUVASZ is still a relatively unknown breed to farmers, or those that knew about them thought they were only show dogs or that they were useless. So what can be attributed to the increase in demand?
First of all, it can be mostly attributed to the farmers. If I sell a good dog and it is a success, the farmer will tell his neighbors, or mentions it to other farmers in the greater farming community. So I have people calling me saying, I spoke to so and he recommended I buy a dog from you. This is the best marketing, there is nothing better than this. I can speak as much as I want about how good my dogs are, but they have to prove themselves that they are indeed good.
Word of mouth marketing is what we would call this then?
Yes, absolutely, word of mouth, and the dogs have to prove it themselves to the farmer that they are worthy and capable LGDs, they have to speak for themselves. It is useless to say, we want to make the breed more popular, okay, but to whom? There was a time when we also attempted to promote the KUVASZ as a companion animal and organized Meet the Breed events or the Canadian Pet Expo. We received a lot of positive feedback at such events as many said the dogs were very nice and cute, but they don't desire a dog like this because there is too much shedding, they are too big or they might have trouble handling them. This is logical since the more one selects for the correct attributes that are necessary for a dog like this to be a viable LGD, the more those traits counteract the expected behavior and temperament expected from an urban dog. So we have a decision to make, we either undertake stringent selection criteria to produce the best possible LGDs, or we can counter-select against these attributes to make a better companion or urban dog. They don't really coincide with each other, however. It is not to say that a good LGD that has a strong nervous system and with a well-balanced temperament cannot live in the city. In fact, I would say that a good LGD that has a strongly developed sense of situational awareness, which is critical for an LGD, I believe can be comfortable in any environment, and this is very much dictated by genetics. I do not believe that with enough socialization this can be overturned. A dog that is innately stable will be stable in any circumstance. I recently, about 4 or 5 months ago, brought back a male that was actively and successfully working alongside 200 sheep with some maremmas. This dog was never previously on a leash in its life, never left the farm, but when I brought him into the city he behaved absolutely normally. My only criticism against him is that he is not human aggressive enough, and is mostly friendly to everyone. Which brings me back to a question you asked me earlier regarding various Hungarian bloodlines. There are some trends that are apparent that certain bloodlines or dogs from certain kennels are more suitable to what is really needed in a dog to be a successful LGD, but there is also the type of counter-selection which is molding the KUVASZ into a general purpose or house guardian or protection dog. This is evident in the behavior of the dogs. For example, there are bloodlines that are much more human aggressive, and I know back home there are those types of breeders who say that if anyone gets within a 2-meter bubble near the dog it should indiscriminately attack. In my opinion, this is a completely flawed conceptualization of what a LGD should be. There are also those dogs that are very canine and predator aggressive, but have no interest in people or to guard against them. This is better for an LGD, but the best and most desired in my view is a dog that is well balanced and guards against both 2- and 4-legged adversaries. Course, whenever possible a dog should be tested against all these possible challenges. Nonetheless, it is evident that various breeders and kennels have a different conceptualization and focus.
Christian, could we speak a little bit about the actual experiences that you hear from the farmers regarding the working abilities of KUVASZ and how they compare with other LGD breeds? Perhaps tell us the advantages and disadvantages of the KUVASZ versus other LGD breeds. What is it that the farmers admire in the KUVASZ and what do they perhaps dislike about them? What is the reason farmers might seek out a KUVASZ, and what is driving this added demand for the dogs?
The first thing I would like to mention is that one must understand how land and property is divided here in North America. It is unlike back home, where there is a village here, then a valley, or pasture which is usually government-owned land, and another village there. On the contrary, here most land is private, and we must understand that the distribution of land is very different. Therefore, most dogs work on large private farms and lands. There are some public pastures, but it is much more scarce than in Europe. I would categorize the farmers here into two broad categories. The first own smaller farms, less and more diverse animals, and these people often keep these animals for themselves, or as a hobby, and perhaps they are not as far away from urbanization, so they require a specific type of dog to suit their needs. The other broad category are large-scale farmers or ranchers who farm commercially, who perhaps have 1,000 or more sheep, live much further from the city, and might require a dozen or more LGDs in a pack to safeguard the livestock. KUVASZ have advantages and disadvantages in both. The advantage compared the Great Pyrenees and maremma. I can speak for these two as I am familiar with them, but I cannot tell you, for example, how they compare to Central Asian Shepherds, as they do not use them here, because they say it is too aggressive, and not as real LGD. So in comparison to the Pyrenees and maremma, the KUVASZ is more tenacious and aggressive, but those other two seem to have less prey drive, and are less likely to bug the livestock. There are those types of KUVASZ bloodlines where it is evident over generations that they have higher than desired prey drive, whereby the grandmother, daughter and even granddaughter all have higher than desired prey drive. Sometimes this is only a game for the dogs, but at other times they might seriously pursue the livestock with the intention of killing them. I know of an example where a dog killed a few sheep and the farmer called me and told me he shot the dog. What can I say to this, other than this is another form of selection? What we have to understand is that for the farmer these dogs are a tool and not their pet, and if the dog does not perform its intended function, some don't have a lot of patience with them. So KUVASZ are more tenacious, more readily willing to confront predators, but being too keen can also be a disadvantage because it might pursue the predator too far or unnecessarily, and there is a chance that the dog will be lured out and will fall victim to a trap and be killed. It can also occur that the dogs pursue the predators and do not come back for 2 or 3 hours, leaving the livestock unprotected. This is one reason I mentioned before that there are farmers who like mixed breed packs where perhaps a KUVASZ will go and chase predators away, but a Pyrenees or maremma won't. The other thing they like about the KUVASZ is that its hair is easy to manage and does not mat like that of the Pyrenees, which requires brushing to remove them. A KUVASZ can live in all climates and can eat anything, and this is why we need to select for these hardy traits. I know that even in Hungary we hear of occurrences where some KUVASZ are gluten intolerant or have allergies to chicken. I know such dogs already exist, I know of some, and this is unacceptable. This breed should be able to consume anything, and even when there is a shortage of food they should be content. The Pyrenees is also known to bark a lot, especially at night, so if it is in an area where someone might be bothered by this, a KUVASZ might be a better choice as it tends to bark less. For a farm where there might be a lot of traffic or regular customers, a KUVASZ might not be the best choice. Here they liked and purposefully selected for softer dogs that were less human aggressive and perhaps would let anyone onto their property. I don't agree with this, as I said before, the dogs should guard against everything, but in a balanced and rational way. Overall, in comparing the KUVASZ to the Pyrenees and maremma, the KUVASZ can hold its own, and in many instances it is even better. I know of another example where the farmer previously had Polish Tatra Shepherds, and once he acquired a KUVASZ he preferred them and decided to switch over his pack. So we are very competitive with the other white LGD breeds, but we need to also illustrate that KUVASZ can compete with other well-recognized LGD breeds that have a good reputation, such as the Sarplananak or the Bulgarian Karakachin dog. As I said before, and I cannot emphasize it enough, the most important thing is for the dog to be good in itself and for it to speak for itself. If we place them in the field and they do good, that is the best marketing, but if it is not good, they will return it. The other thing I would mention is that we do provide a guarantee. Breeders here provide a health guarantee for genetic defects such as dysplasia, but we also provide a guarantee that in case the dog is not good, we will stand behind it. If it is not good, they can return it, we'll exchange it, or we will figure something out to support the farmer. We don't simply sell the pus and say, "Oxy, from here on it is your problem," and because of this people buy from us with confidence. They can buy an unregistered Pyrenees from a backyard breeder for half the price, but they would get no guarantee, and if the dog doesn't work out, then tough luck. This guarantee certainly helps us sell more puppies, as the farmers know we stand behind our dogs. Of course, there are cases when the guarantee must be utilized, and there are even instances when we help the farmer or provide a new dog even when it is not clear that we as breeders are at fault. For example, if a dog runs away and gets killed by a car, we would still likely replace the dog or discount a new dog, because it is always possible the dog we produced somehow had a tendency for the behavior. We try to give the farmers the benefit of doubt.
Christian, I have 2 more questions. First, do you have any relationships or contact with Hungarian organizations, clubs, etc., or even an informal relationship? This is my first question. My other question is, what are you planning in Canada for the future of the breed? You mentioned the population numbers, but beyond that, do you have any special plans or just to continue to try and further break into the LGD market with KUVASZ?
With the Hungarian associations and clubs, the only relationship we have is that they know we exist. Perhaps this is funny, but we do not have any special relationship with them, and as I said before, there is no interest on their part. So for example, I have relationships and speak with people from around the world, talk with them regularly, write articles, etc. I will be conducting a similar interview with folks from Argentina, and I wrote articles for the Finns and for people who are interested in LGDs or perhaps want assistance in placing dogs in the field.
So regarding KUVASZ, people contacted you from Argentina and Finland?
Yes, that is correct. And I asked them, why did you contact me from Argentina? They said because the Hungarians are not interested.
So the Argentines contacted the Hungarian club and they did not receive a response?
This is what they told me. I don't know the details, best to ask them directly. But they contacted me, I did nor seek them out. They also have tremendous opportunities for LGDs, such as in Patagonia or Terra del Fuego. They have an abundance of wildlife and predators like cougars, and their 2 maremmas are most utilized along with Great Pyrenees. So then why we cannot utilize KUVASZ in that environment? So there are many opportunities, and if the goal is to increase the population, and for the population to maintain as much heterogeneousness as possible, then we should utilize all possible and viable bloodlines. They too in Argentina have interesting bloodlines, and they even have dogs that descend from Hungarian ancestors dating back as far as the 1950-60s. We should try and utilize all these bloodlines. It doesn't mean all those dogs there are good, but we should at least explore what is there and what we could utilize. This is to answer your first question. The other question regarding what we would like to do for the future. The phenotype, or the exterior of the dog, still needs to be improved. In July 2020 we finally succeeded in changing the standard to be the same as the Hungarian. This was a 2-year-long process, as previously here for a long time a different standard was utilized, much like today in the US. The Americans were most opposed to this, and are still against it because they have a separate standard where they allow for straight hair, level bite, smaller size, etc. So our club is structured in a way that we are under the authority of the Canadian Kennel Club, and as such we are required to hold a specialty show at least once every 3 years to maintain our club status. We must do this even though we are not very motivated by dog showing. Now if we look back at the 2016 specialty show, we only had 8 dog entries, but by 2019 we had 20, and I believe that for the next one we will have at least 30. And what I am especially proud of, and what we demonstrated at the last specialty, is that we were able to take completely untrained dogs off farms from beside the livestock and showcase them at the show. Last time we were criticized that the dogs were not groomed enough. Of course they weren't, they came from farms. They were cleaned but not bathed the heck out of. Of course, there were also dogs that did not behave well and some were fearful. Yes, some were, and it was evident that such a dog was not able to cope well in an urbanized setting. But there were also those dogs that behaved perfectly even though they were never before at a public event. So we would like to take these dogs as well and health test them for at least hip and elbow dysplasia and utilize them for breeding. A big challenge is logistics and getting the farmers to cooperate. Some might say, okay, I agree to do it, but you guys pay for the health testing. Regarding health in particular, if I may say a few words about it. Myself and other breeders here, we believe in full or complete health, and not only the health tests and screenings that can be done. It is easy to say here are 4 or 5 things that we should health test our breed for, such as hip and elbow dysplasia and PRA, and of course with KUVASZ PRA is now very popular. So what is happening in recent years is that this has become fashionable, especially if they desire to sell puppies to Westerners, and the only thing that matters is for the puppy to be PRA free. We should test for this disorder, but let's not forget that this is a disease that impacts dogs in old age and might cause blindness at maybe 7, 8, 9, or an even older age. But let's be realistic. If we place a LGD in the field and say it has food allergies or certain intolerances, it will not make it to that age where PRA would impact its life. Or, if a dog is unable to reproduce, and we know this is already occurring with KUVASZ, even though they are trying to hide it or conceal these issues, these should be unacceptable for a KUVASZ. I find it equally unacceptable having to artificially inseminate bitches other than when frozen semen is used, but why is there a need to do artificial insemination when there are 2 live dogs present? I also do not believe in C-sections. I know of a breeder in the US where each litter she has is born via C-section, and not because the female has an issue, but because she thinks this is better and easier. Here in Canada, the dogs live in such an environment that it will test the dog's true health. The temperature fluctuates from -40 C in the winter to +40 C in the summer. So we need to be aware of all these things. Another important feature that we need to pay special attention to is the dentition of our dogs. A dog's dentition is its primary tool and weapon. But it is not enough to say there are no missing teeth and the bite is correct. We also need to pay close attention to the size of the teeth, the size of the canines, the width of the jaw, and how much do they deteriorate over time. Bad dentition will wear out over time. We cannot have 4 or 5-year-old dogs that are toothless because their teeth wore off. This is especially the case if the dog has level bite. This is an extremely important thing to pay attention to.
Christian, is there something that you find particularly important to share regarding the KUVASZ that are out in Canada and I as a regular lay person might know I have asked you?
The first thing is that the greater KUVASZ community should know that we are not at the end of the need for LGDs. Being the 21st century does not mean this is an outdated concept. In fact, what I forgot to mention is that here in Canada there is a strong organic, free, range and pasture-raised movement, which means animals are less confined to cages or barns and more outside, compounding potential predator and livestock conflict. Moreover, we can no longer poison predators like before when they used to drop poison to cull coyotes. So the chances are that demand for LGDs will likely increase even more. The other thing is that not everything surrounding KUVASZ is so black or grim, but I do believe we are facing a potential 10-year window where we really try and concentrate in taking this breed in the right direction, or it will all be lost. If we look at inbreeding, and I sent you a table, we can see that year over year in Hungary inbreeding is rising, but nobody wants to pay attention to this, or they deny this is happening, or the statistics are presented in a way that they don't appear alarming. However, it is evident from the 1980s onward how these numbers are consistently increasing, and we also know that if a population reached an inbreeding coefficient of 10%, it enters the extinction vortex, which means the population is small, genetic diversity is low, and with each passing generations less puppies will be born, fertility issues start to emerge, and the cycle continues and further decreases the population, and escaping this is impossible, and will lead to extinction. So we need to do something. Here is one possibility. I initially said I did not favor Canadian bloodlines. However, when such a Canadian KUVASZ is bred to a Hungarian one, we can in one generation change a lot in terms of phenotype, and if we take those offspring and further breed them again to another Hungarian bloodline dog to create 3/4 Hungarian, one would not even be able to tell that Canadian type KUVASZ is in those dogs. But genetically speaking, they would be different and would help in diversifying the gene pool. With all of my breedings, I calculate inbreeding coefficients, not only for myself, but for the other Canadian breeders as well, and with some of these breedings the inbreeding coefficient is 0.2 or 0.3%. But with pure Hungarian bloodlines, I cannot achieve a number below 5%. My last litter was 5%, but usually it is 8 to 9 or 10%. And in some instances there are dogs back home that are 20% inbreeding coefficient, but its consequences are also readily evident. But in those breedings it is all about type, and let just focus on the exterior look of the dog. I also love the correct type KUVASZ, but we must have the fundamentals present, and that is that the dog must be able to live long, able to reproduce and be healthy. With health we should focus on what impacts the dog's quality of life the most and at what age. Everyone is obsessed with PRA. I agree that we should be testing for it, but if a dog cannot achieve an elderly age, then what is the use in this testing? One possible solution would be to import foreign bloodlines into Hungary as an outcross, but this is almost like a taboo topic. Some say, who knows what is in those dogs? Maybe they are right, maybe there is some ancestor in these dogs that wasn't really a KUVASZ, but it would bring in new blood. I have also noticed that when we take a mediocre, or even smaller Hungarian dog, and we mate it to another mediocre Canadian dog, and all of a sudden we get very good offspring. Why? I would think because the two dogs are totally heterogeneous. In terms of dentition, I see much better dentition in such mixes than in either parent. I also see sometimes we get tough and hardy dogs from these matings, even though most of the ancestors of Canadian dogs are not that aggressive. Such dogs could be reintroduced into Hungary, but we would need a serious level of international cooperation, and not only with me. Okay, I speak the language so it is easier with me, but with others as well and in other countries. Currently this is missing, and not only is this missing, you probably see how many KUVASZ breed clubs are in Hungary now. I think it is 3 different ones, but I hear a 4th one is emerging as well. So they are busy infighting, let alone to look towards the outside.
I understand. Christian. I thank you very much that you told us all these things, and I think those people admiring LGDs will find this very interesting, especially those interested in Hungarian LGDs. We can only wish you a lot of luck in your continued work, and we trust that this conversation will prove to be very useful here in Hungary.
Thank you very much, and I really appreciate this opportunity to tell you what we are doing here, because like I said, there has not been much interest in this from Hungary. I hope that with this interview we can start something positive in terms of interest in LGDs, and the other thing I wanted to illustrate was to show that not everything is so dark and grim as it related to KUVASZ as LGDs, as not everything is lost yet. We need to act in quickly, and by utilizing stringent selection criteria, I think the breed is still salvageable. We are not yet at that level that everything is finished, but if we leave it like this and continue down this path of counter-selection which I keep seeing, then I am afraid that everything will be finally lost.